Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. We're starting a new series on the Vietnam War. I'm going to be using Time Life books, Boston Publishing Company, the Vietnam Experience. I've got about 25 of them, only about 15 of them here in Connecticut. The other 10 are back in Utah. But I'm only going to be sampling from 3 or 4, I think 3 of them, at some length. Now, as you all know, you're supposed to begin any given speech or lesson or whatever. If you're trying to impart knowledge to someone, you need to start out by telling them why what you're going to say is important. Why should they listen? Why should they care? Why do they need to know? Some of you are probably just motivated on your own. You want to know about Vietnam. But let me just prod you a little bit. Did we win or didn't we? Now, we all know about the helicopters taking off from the embassy with the very last people clinging to them and stuff, and then landing on battleships, American battleships that were waiting, and pushing those helicopters overboard so more helicopters could land. They actually pushed perfectly good helicopters into the water, trying to get as many people evacuated as possible. We lost then, right? That means we lost. If we withdrew in the face of an onslaught, not from an insurgency, but from a full-fledged, large Western-style army. But I do want to add that for 15 years, we kept the communists busy there. We distracted China and Russia. We kept them spending large streams of money. It was nothing to us. We just had to raise our taxes. We had inflation, and that was a bunch of crap. And you know, it wasn't any fun in America, but the strain on their economies was greater. And there's only so much that they were able to do in the world. So I think it was worth the fight. I think we could have done it better. I think we should have done it better. And I think today we're trying to do what we did in Vietnam. We're trying it in Iraq. It's very strange to me. World War II, our strategy worked fine. Look at Japan and Germany today. As soon as 1950 rolls around, we have the Korean War. Our strategy falls apart. Now, because of what we did in the Korean War, there is a little dictatorship country, North Korea. It's like as if we closed Hitler in and only let him have Berlin and a few other major cities or something like that. I don't get it. I don't get it. And it was terrible the way we acted in Vietnam, and it's stupid what we're doing today in Iraq. We need to take the model that we did in Germany and Japan. Destroy everything that doesn't submit to us immediately. And shove a copy of our Constitution down their throat. But let's look into the reasons why we had so much trouble in Vietnam, or not so much the reasons why we had trouble. The reasons we had trouble is because of our policy. But let's look at the details of that, and you'll know a little bit more about Vietnam. Now, one thing I say before we go forward, this is going to be somewhat eclectic. This is about the Vietnam War altogether. I'm going to be taking from America Takes Over, a Contagion of War, South Vietnam on Trial, and Passing the Torch, I believe. Oh, and Tools of War, but that one's, yeah, that one's about the tools of war, and is less intense. So, 3 or 4 or 5 at the most, maybe. And these books are not written in a number 1, 2, 3, you know, like that. It's just 25 books on Vietnam. And the books themselves aren't, it's not like a chronology or anything. It's just a bunch of essays by a bunch of different people about a bunch of different stuff that they can stuff under this particular title. So, I'm going to go through them page by page in order that the book has the material, and I hope that that's sufficient. We'll see. Okay, we're going to start on page 8 of America Takes Over. As you know, there were French troops in Vietnam clear back in the 40s and 50s, and probably back in the 20s and 30s. I don't know how long they had been there. A long time, the French had. And they said, we're broke, we don't have any money, we're pulling out, we can't fight this. And America started helping out in 1954, I believe it was, maybe it was 56 or something. But it wasn't until the early 60s that we actually had any combat personnel. And at first it was just a couple hundred, and they weren't really combat personnel. They were actually just advisors, but they ran around with the army and they were in danger of being killed and stuff. But then, quote, by the end of May 1965, approximately 20,000 American combat troops had swollen the ranks of American forces in Vietnam to 46,500. So, 1965, there's 46,000 troops. The Marines had been the first to take on a combat role in Vietnam precisely because their tail was shortest. That is, we sent the Marines there first because they go in with what they need. The tail refers to the amount of supplies that have to come. And the Marines, quote, carried what they needed with them. Continuing, but as the buildup continued throughout 1965, the logistical needs became greater and greater. A massive problem commanding General William Westmoreland needed more than a year to solve. Now, I don't know if they took a year to solve all the problems in World War II, but maybe they did. A few statistics show the immensity of the problem. By December 31, 1965, almost 1.3 million tons of dry cargo had been shipped to Vietnam from the United States. By the end of 1965, get this, 75 million barrels of petroleum products had been consumed, and 50,000 tons of ammunition had been consumed. This is 1965, before we even got going. So, there's a massive situation to supply all of this. Huge infrastructure was needed. $35 million worth of construction had been completed. Back in 1965, that was a fair amount of construction. Back in the United States, these statistics, while unnoticed by many, took on real meaning for some Americans. For example, it gives the Oscar Mayer plant, not Meyer, Mayer, in Madison, Wisconsin, was asked to can 2.6 million hams for shipment to the troops. Then also, there was $58 million placed to order jeeps and $250 million to order helicopters, right, to get the war going. All right, we skip a few pages. Now let's look a little bit of these Marines that have been dropped off and are there, 40,000 strong. They were near the base Da Nang. You probably heard that. You're going to grow familiar with quite a few cities. So, intelligence revealed that within 25 miles of Da Nang, 7 Viet Cong combat units totaling 560 men were operating, and that there were 1,480 troops within a 50-mile radius. But they knew little of their day-to-day movement or of their relation to the civilian population. One Marine staff officer said simply, "Intelligence of what the situation was non-existent." So they basically didn't know very much about what was going on. They knew something about a few troops, and as it says, intelligence was non-existent. By the end of 1965, they would know more. So when we started this war, we basically didn't know who the enemy was, how to find them, how to fight them, what the difference between them and the civilian population was. We went in blind. It was very different from going into, say, fight the fascists in Italy in World War II, or going in to fight the Germans or the Japs. We didn't know exactly who we were fighting, exactly what the enemy was. We went into this because we knew that the communists were the ones backing it. And France, our ally from the war, had to back out, and we had to pick up the slack, or else let the communists have the country. But, as it says here, when we got our feet on the ground, we didn't know anything about what the enemy was doing or how many strong they were, really. By the end of '65, they would know more. Viet Cong troops' strength was low, but the NLF apparatus, I looked back over this, I can't find what NLF means. The NLF apparatus permeated the southern portion of the Taor, T-A-O-R. That's their region that their group is responsible to patrol. So the Marines estimated that the insurgents controlled 1/3 of the population in I Corps and influenced another third. the Marines